Hey everyone. Once again, welcome to Talking Headless. The irony, of course, of Talking Headless is I actually have a head, but what I'm going to do, as I always do, is concentrate on a single company and answer a question and talk about something I really like and something I really dislike. Today, the company is going to be ServiceNow. Is it the world's largest unicorn still, or is it not? So here's the story. Several years ago, and this is 2018, I believe, when ServiceNow was a mere $2.8 billion company, um, I got a call from uh, Bobby Lackaboo, who is at the time a ServiceNow AR person, who had been, and I had been referred to her by Holly Simmons, who was also key in corporate communications at ServiceNow and continues to be key wherever she goes. Um, and they said, well, we're creating this offering. It's called customer service management. And we emphasize the service management, not the customer service, meaning their operational service management. And they saw it as a kind of extension of their core business, and the thing that had been their core business for the last almost 30 years. Well, I guess it was about 25 years at the time, ITSM. They had been focused on IT ops for a long, long time, and they saw customer service as kind of a offshoot. Well, I was very impressed with what I heard at the time, and I didn't know much about them because they weren't in my realm. And I decided to go to their conference. And at their conference, I had been hearing this wonderful corporate narrative, or at least product narrative, around customer service management. And I went to their conference, and the corporate narrative was just disconnected and crazy. And there were all kinds of competitive things going on at the conference where, for example, the customer service management people had developed this desktop agent, and the ITSM people decided they wanted to own it, and it was theirs, and that was the way it was presented on stage at the time. And it became this like battle over a product, and it was like I was still impressed because of several things I saw, such as the quality of the actual offering, both in customer service management and ITSM, and also their customer success program, which is the best I've ever seen to this day. So I decided to stick with it for a while because there was just something special about them. They didn't have, in the earlier days, they didn't have much of a big industry strategy. They had it a little bit, and they focused on maybe 3 or 4 industries, and it was, some work, and they were kind of tentative about it, but it was something they were just beginning to play with, really. And keep in mind, this is only 5 years ago, right? That's it, 5. Notice this proves how headless I am. I held up 2 hands for 5. And they were also tentative in the development of strategic partnerships. You know what it was? They were a solutions company, and they were trying to find their way to a new set of solutions that they thought would become something of value. And then 2 things happened. First, in 2019, Disney Plus went live, and Disney Plus was and I presume still, but I don't know. At the time, was a ServiceNow customer for CSM. Disney Plus figured when they went live, they'd have 1 million subscribers. They had 12 million. It created a massive problem with lag, and it was just a mess. I was one of the people who was actually affected by it. ServiceNow handled it flawlessly, and I mean flawlessly. It was spectacularly well done. How they handled the thousands, the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands of calls into Disney's contact centers and online queries about saying, why am I not getting my service, and so on and so forth. Churn was almost zero. Disney Plus, of course, was a major success. And I realized at the time, because I would become their advisor, that this was a real turning point for ServiceNow on this, at least on the customer service management, which they now, by the way, call customer workflows, on the customer service management side, because it showed the impact of service ops on customer experience. So service ops on CX impact was clear. Disney customers did not leave Disney right away because the service ops worked so spectacularly well that Disney's churn level was almost zero and their difficulty was almost nothing. So I had suggested they actually put Baby Yoda on stage the next year, but COVID hit. And then they had a digital conference, and they had, I believe it was the CTO, or it might have been the CIO, but I think it was the CTO of Disney Plus actually on the stage talking about their partner, Disney Plus's partner, ServiceNow. That was a big breakthrough point for ServiceNow because they began to fully understand as a company the impact that what they did, even though it was operational, had on the actual experience the customers and later on, as we'll see, employees and others had. The other big deal was Bill McDermott came in as CEO. And he brought along, as chief strategy officer, Nick Sitson, and the company just dramatically transformed. I mean, think about this. I'll just give you some numbers to give you an idea of how dramatic the transformation was, and then we'll get into the details and some of the concerns I have and some of the things they need to do. But as I said, 2018 revenues were roughly 2.8 billion. Their projected revenues for 2026, or at least their hope for revenue in 2026, 15 billion. And you know what? I think they'll make it. I actually have been calling them the world's largest unicorn for a reason, right? I would not bet against them hitting that 15 billion number and even potentially exceeding it in 2026. Now, again, I'm talking headless here, okay? Meaning I'm not a financial analyst. I'm not trying to make I'm not forecasting anything. I'm just talking about the kind of confidence I actually have in ServiceNow's ability to execute and achieve. But there are always some caveats, which we'll get into. So what I saw in the 5 years subsequent to 2018 in that kind of, it wasn't a hot mess, but I'll call it a warm mess anyway at the time, is a company that right now is one of the probably the most progressively smart companies on the planet and is incredibly well focused on taking care of business as it practically is and vision and mission associated with taking care of that business. Now, what does that mean? Well, one, since that time, they've evolved and fully recognized that they are a platform company, okay, and that they've developed what they call the Now platform, which is first to to encompass what they needed to encompass. Second, they've understood that as things occur in the real world, they have to think past the hype immediately and start thinking much more foundationally for what's occurred. So, for example, about 3 or 4 years ago, they began looking at industries much more seriously than they did 5 years ago. And as a result of that, now they have a very strong industry focus, especially around customer workflows. They have what they didn't have back then was they didn't have any fantastically great strategic partnerships. Now they have strategic partnerships with Microsoft, with Adobe, and that has an interesting potential play, which I'm going to get into a little later, with AT&T, with AWS, with Google, with Qualtrics, right? I mean, companies that actually are meaningful to them in some way. And you might wonder, for example, why Adobe, right? That's essentially a strategic data partnership, marketing data and service data, and an service ops and marketing ops data too. But there's more to it for later down the road. But again, they see value in a practical sense. And yes, actually, I I think it's Brent. It says Players Productions Network, so it probably is Brent. Is reminding me that NVIDIA is one of their partners also. Again, really smart move. At this point, everybody's smart going with NVIDIA. So what they've done is build out a strategic partnership ecosystem. Now, what they've been able to do with their platform is encompass a very broad range of capabilities that allow you to not only build on the platform, but allow you to automate highly specific processes, workflows, and to be fair to them, that is their power, is that, right? That their ability to operate those things works really, really well, right? And their ability to expand them. So, for example, right now they have, I'll call it, in the platform, there are sort of 5 different, what would I call them? 5 different layers. They're not really layers. They're 5 different uses of the platform. One is ITSM, of course, the historic use. Another one is around customers and CX and customer workflows. A third one is around HR. And God bless them, they don't call it human capital management. I am so happy about that. I can't stand that term. And that's not even what I dislike this week. But add that as an adjunct. I dislike intensely calling human resources human capital management. So they have human resources. They have industries, and they primarily locate CX and industries together. That's how their focus has been around that. They have what they call creator, although it was really developer programmer rather than creator, right? It's not creator in the term that, say, we think of it, which is the creation of content that is utilized for, impact on the thinking of customers. It's on developing, it's where you'll see it, for example, from other companies, not so much from them, low code, no code, for example. It's that kind of development capability. They have finance and supply chain too, although if I'm them, I'd make finance separate from supply chain, even though there's an interrelationship, of course. And actually, supply chain has a tie into CX and industries too, where they at some point down the road, they can make kind of the connections that are there. But these at this point are separate capabilities within their platform that they've been able to systematize and then utilize as individual platform-centric individual platform development-centric platforms. And they also see, which is interesting, where they don't really separate ERP per se, although the finance really sits in ERP and supply chain is adjunct to ERP and so on. They see themselves sitting as a system of action on top of ERP. Now, the other thing they've done, of course, is with the evolution of all the offerings, they've obviously, like everyone else, gone into generative AI. Now, here's the deal, though. First of all, remember what I said earlier, that they think past the hype and they focus on the execution and the useful execution of the actual, let's say, new kid on the block. So with AI, which is not generally a new kid on the block, they've looked at it from the standpoint of automating and continually improving workflow and processes, and allowing the human centric side of it to continue with the heavy load, but taking care of the automation of those processes and workflows is how they see it. And they've added what they call Now Assist. Now is the platform name, and Assist is their generative AI name, to, in effect, make that a much more right-brained activity, just the way Gen AI makes everything a much more right-brained activity in terms of how you interact with the AI and what AI does for you. So they have Now Assist for a number of areas. I'm not going to get into it in the interest of time, but they utilize AI from not a large language model, which is what you hear from everybody, but from what they call small large language models. Now, again, I'm separating that, and I hope I'm right here, from a small language model, which is built for an express specific purpose, where I think a small large language model is a subset of a large language model that is built for an express specific purpose. They've got industry specific models. They've got models that are highly specific to the use cases they're being designed for. And it's very smart approach. And they have what they call Now Assist. And that assist is that generative AI, use case specific, industry specific, et cetera, model. They're the first company of substantial size to really, really focus in on the idea of large, large isn't necessarily the thing or great. And I appreciate that a great deal. I do have a concern, however, at least from the standpoint of their interactions with analysts and their recent analyst summit for at least on the non-NDA side. They don't seem to really focus on the guardrails, and that's disturbing to me. I'll get into it a little later, but ultimately, we are dealing with hallucinations, and hallucinations, ironically, are real when it comes to Gen AI, especially. And there was no conversation about retrieval augmented generation, which is RAG, which is basically there was no big discussion about, other than very generically, about trust and building a kind of equivalent to Salesforce's trust layer. There was no really substantive discussion around the controls necessary to make sure that the Gen AI isn't going crazy. And again, we've seen it go crazy multiple times. I'm not going to get into that. Now, that said, their product strategy with Gen AI is highly intelligent. As I said, it's use case and industry highly specifically focused. And that matters a great deal in terms of them. Okay, now, they also have been talking about something which it's a little concerning, I guess is the word. Not something I say they have to do, but so they recently have been not just advertising job positions, but talking about what they're calling lead to cash. And they said that they're going to be able to handle the processes and workflows for pre-sales through post-sales. When you look at what the last time I heard lead to cash was actually Calidus Cloud. And what that meant, Calidus Cloud, which had started out on the compensation side, had started acquiring companies and building out products and so on to create kind of a product ecosystem that covered demand gen all the way through post-sales activity. And it sounds like this is what ServiceNow is trying to do, which puts them squarely in the world of CRM. And I don't know that that's a place that they play really yet. They've always played in a portion of that world, obviously around customer service. But going into sales with a toe dipped in marketing, at least from a demand gen side, if that's what they mean by pre-sales to post-sales and lead to cash, I don't think, let's say this, I think they're capable of producing the quality products that are needed to accomplish whatever it is they're setting out to do with it on the one hand. On the other hand, I don't see the company organized to handle that yet. Now, again, it's relatively early, but it's been around. I mean, I saw these job descriptions have been out since, I believe, August or something. So it's a few months it's around. But I really need to see more on this because they're putting themselves not just squarely in my wheelhouse, but in the wheelhouse of the most mature, largest business software category in the world that has I don't know how many actual players. I will metaphorically say a zillion players in some capacity, right? So is this a good move on their part? I don't know. So I guess the best way to look at this now is then what other things do they have to concern themselves with too? All right. So let's look at what ServiceNow has to do. And you'll note when I show you what I'm about to show you, I am not talking about lead to cash in this, but it's important that you see what it is. All right. These are the things that concern me. I already touched on one, which was the AI guardrails. I don't see it in their upcoming product releases as anything pretty exceptional. I don't see it in their current product release all that much. Again, please, ServiceNow, prove me wrong. I don't know what I don't, I didn't, let's say this. I see no real significant, vivid effort being made to make this a paramount requirement for ServiceNow. I don't know what's in your future product releases. I shouldn't say I don't see it in there. I haven't seen any of that. What I do know is that I don't see a big effort being talked about now, and it needs to be talked about and it needs to be done. I don't know what your releases look like, and I don't know where these things might be on your timeline. But if I'm you, ServiceNow, I'm turning this into the number one priority of your next release. Will you do that? I doubt it. It's probably way too far along for that to happen. And basically, it's just me talking, and I am headless, theoretically. The other thing I'm a little concerned about is that, and it kind of stems from 2018, is that their corporate narrative, not their product narrative, which is we are a platform. That's their product narrative. But their corporate narrative kind of blows with the wind, whatever it is, it is. Like, for example, if you go back to, I think it was 2020, it was, we are going to be the platform of platforms. Then there was a couple of other ones which escaped me in between there. We're going to be this. We are going to be this. And then it was the ROI, the return on intelligence, and we are going to be the business transformation platform. It just, whatever the current thing is, they just kind of go with it and they add it to the word platform. Look, realistically, you need to not do that. At least if you're going to make the transition and evolve your corporate narrative, and Alan Berkson, correct me if I'm wrong. I know you may not be here, but please correct me if I'm wrong. At least if you make the transition make the evolution, make the transitions as to why that evolution occurred clear. Because right now you just kind of blow with the wind. Again, product narrative, clear as bell. We are a platform, but what you're doing with that platform is part of your corporate narrative, just everywhere and then some, all within the context of platform, but all over the place when it comes to it. So the first thing, rebuild the guardrails. The second thing, focus on a single path to be a corporate narrative for a little while, or at least explain the evolutions rather than just adopt a new one and drop the last one. The third one I want to go through, and you'll note I'm doing this somewhat out of order, is reformulate the context for the way you handle service ops, because I saw a big emphasis on efficiency. What I didn't see on the customer side, which you need to see when it comes to customer workflows, and especially, is a conversation about convenience. Look, ultimately, customer workflows are designed for the companies that are trying to make their customers' activities with those companies convenient to what those customers need. Efficiency obviously improves the level of convenience potentially if you do it right, as does effectiveness. But if you're focused on efficiencies, you're focused on the idea of streamline, but you're losing your focus a bit on the CX side, which you can't lose, right? One of the things that makes you powerful, ServiceNow, and one of the things that made you grow is your recognition of the impact you had on customers and now on employees and now on the supply chain, finance. You've always known the impact you've had on IT. And, you're seeing your platform at a C level, and you're seeing your C level. One of your C-level main customers is the chief customer officer. So focusing on the efficiency that the workflows and processes have, thanks to you, is fine to a point, but it's the impact on the customer as a result that actually matters, because the outcome the companies are looking for is that convenience for the customer, not the efficiency of the process. right? So you need to refocus it there. Another thing is, and this goes to a couple of places really, and some of your strengths really is when COVID hit, one of the biggest, I'll call it one of the biggest conversations that went on in the technology world was around empathy, right? And being empathetic to your customers and your employees and so on and so forth for obvious reasons. I mean, COVID obviously accelerated and augmented and that discussion because of the emotional state that most of us were in during COVID. But at the same time, you guys did superb thought leadership work around empathy. You were out front. You talked to the right brain as opposed to the left brain and the mechanics, but you were able to tie, of course, the technology and everything else to it. But at the same time, you spoke to the idea, and that was really important. You're not doing that now. And you literally you have David Wright running innovation for you. You have working with him as the head of global innovation, as work and reporting to David. You have who? Brian Solis, for God's sake. You have Nick Sitson and Bill McDermott. All four of these people, and Brian's accomplished at this, all four of these people know how to present to the world in a way that impacts the ideas that they present on that world, or creates impact on that world around the ideas they present. They don't need to talk technology. They are as representatives of ServiceNow. They can talk to the ideas. And you guys you had articles, you had videos, you had white papers, you had podcast conversations, you participated in the industry around the discussions. You were there. It became a cultural expression of the company. And one of the other strengths you have, even though you talk way too little about it, is your culture. I mean, you make what do you say? You make you make references to it, but you don't talk to it in the way that you really need to. So bring out your culture more. Rebuild your thought leadership at least to the level you had on empathy, and then blow it up higher. I can go into details, but I'm not going to just because I don't have that kind of time. So, ultimately, you guys are in a position where you could hit that $15 billion. Are you that world's largest unicorn still? Yeah, you're starting to not be a unicorn so much anymore, but at the same time, that's because you're maturing as a company and you have some of the best product offerings. You're one of the most exciting companies to be around. I've talked to, anecdotally, over the last few years, a lot of people, and you've actually become one of the companies that people want to work for as a real, I mean, it's not like you're on par with, if not even exceeding at times, Salesforce when it comes to that, right? To this day, right? So people know who you are. Now what you got to do is effectively fix a few things, right? Smooth out the corporate narrative, expand your thought leadership directly, technically build the guardrails, or at least if you're already doing it, talk more about it. And then understand that the end customer, when it comes to all these processes and workflows you're building for companies, is still an actual human being customer, meaning a C, not a B, right? So if I'm you, fix that up, smooth out your, or evolve and transition your corporate narrative considerably better than you do, and continue to build kind of the products you have and innovate the way you are, and keep highly focused on the one place I think you guys are just totally killer, your platform. Keep that focus, and you guys, 15 billion 2026, I'll bet you exceed it. So with that, I'm going to say, see you, ServiceNow. If anyone has any more questions on it, feel free to contact me at Paul at playazproductions.network. That's PLAYAZPRODUCTIONS.network. And interestingly enough, I don't have it up to put up on the screen, but you get it. Paul at playazproductions.network with any questions you might have, and I'm happy to follow up. And now we move on to our final segment, something I really. Now, for those of you who don't know about this, this is just simple. I'm going to tell you something I really like and something I really dislike, although in the opposite order. So, given time, let's just get started. Something I really dislike. Trends for 2020, whatever. So, here's the deal. I stopped doing CRM trends years ago. The reason being that every single time I would do thank you. Thanks to my partner, Brent Leary. Here is the actual email. So if you'd like to contact me, please do. So I realized at the time that almost everybody doing it, and even me, when I'm not trying to be self-serving, I was being self-serving, as was everybody else. It's hilarious when you look at CRM trends from vendors, because somehow all those trends happen to be exactly what they do. Thank God for that. And I looked at some of them this time. I was actually asked to do, asked about trends for 2024 from a good gentleman from CIO Magazine, which is coming out an article. And I went through, I started looking around at other things in the meantime, and I didn't really give trends to him. I basically said, it's really impossible to do trends because they're ultimately going to be self-serving. But here's what I talked about, what I found. So this is literally from one vendor, by the way. I'm not going to say who. So the first one I saw, he had 11. These are the 4. Every one of them was like this, by the way. I could cherry pick. I didn't have to cherry pick. I could literally just pick anything. First one, increasing hyper-personalization for customers. Do you realize what a joke even the term hyper-personalization is? I mean, what does that even mean? You're going to look at my earwax? You're going to figure out my glasses prescription? We're going to be, what are you going to do? Be molecular about my body composition? You're going to look at my DNA 23andMe test? I mean, it's a ridiculous concept to begin with. And increasing hyper-personalization is even a stupider concept. Increasing from what? Right? I mean, here's the deal. We're human beings. We're individuals. Any technology out there that's devoted to learning something about us can. They can interpret what they think we're like, and they can classify it in any way they want. But it ain't hyper-personalization. It's a term invented for marketers to go beyond personalization. But it's no different. Here's the other one. It's the soaring popularity of social CRM. That was a beaut, especially if you've listened to anything me or Brent or anyone else has said for the last, 12 years. There is no social CRM anymore, right? It hasn't existed since 2011 when everybody and their mother was doing social when it came to CRM. The only reason the term existed was to separate it from traditional CRM at the transition point when social was new, and some companies like Oracle and a few others in the early days were beginning to use or integrate social communication into their CRM platforms. At 2011, everyone had done it. There was no reason to separate it. This is a joke. It's not soaring popularity. It's table stakes. It's built into the fabric of almost every single CRM application on the planet. Here was another one. The increase of user-friendly and mobile-ready CRM solutions. Mobile-ready being something new. Mobile-ready has been around longer than social CRM. Mobile-ready CRM. Every CRM application has a mobile expression. And my caution, thank you once again, Brent. My caution on that social CRM. And by the way, for anyone who has mobile CRM reports, you'll note the one I have here is a mobile CRM market, and it says there is $26 billion mobile CRM market as of 2022, and $59 billion as of 2029 is expected. This is not a trend. It's just is. And it just is. It's not a trend. None of these are trends. There's a trend means something that is relatively new, that's upward growing, or something that exists that's growing in a way that is evolving what it is, right? It's not just something that's interesting that hadn't appeared before. Mobile CRM's been around as long as social CRM, if not longer. Every CRM application has a mobile expression of one form or another in the universe. And what this means is if you see a market research company selling a social CRM report or a mobile CRM report, don't buy it, because it's BS. And simple as that. Now, finally, driving collaboration and customer centricity, uniting sales, marketing, and ops. They left out service, but the reality is that's not something new. That's CRM. That's literally what CRM is. This is basically saying a trend in CRM is CRM, right? So, I mean, this is the moronic stuff that's out there when it comes to trends. Stop forecasting what's in your interest. Stop talking about it. Just do the work, provide customers with what they need, and everyone will be happy, right? And even I'll be happy, right? And you know how hard that is to make me, right? All right. So now we're going to go to the final slide and something I like, and that's Newfoundland. All right. Now, self-serving, sure. I'm married to a Newfie, right? I've been married to one for 42 years, but this is a country who many of you might have learned something about from the musical that was one of Broadway's historically biggest hits. Big Surprise came on 2018, just closed this year, and was one of the biggest grossing musicals in Broadway history. This was might have told you something about the people of the country, of the province, excuse me. You think of them as a country. They're down to earth. They're salt of the earth kind of humans. They're tough as nails, and at the same time, they might be the kindest people on the planet. And here's the thing about it. There's a knock-knock joke that they use in the Broadway musical, where they said a lady from New York says to a lady from Newfoundland, says, Newfoundlanders are terrible at knock-knock jokes. And the Newfoundlander says, why? And she says, all right. And the New York lady says, I'll tell you what, let me do the knock-knock joke. She said, I'll be the Newfoundlander doing a knock-knock joke. And she goes, knock, knock. And the Newfoundlander lady goes, who's there? And the New York lady goes, oh, the door's open. Just come right on in. And that is typical of Newfoundlanders. Their door is open to you. You're a stranger, they'll help you. The play was based on 9/11, 7,000 people stranded out, unable to get into U.S. airspace, stranded in Gander, Newfoundland, town of 9,000, who took them in for days, fed them, clothed them, kept them their minds off the tragedy, got them the ability to talk to their families, did everything possible, stayed up for like hundreds of hours straight just to make these people comfortable and safe, feel safe. They're remarkable that way. It's one of the most beautiful countries I've ever seen. If you're a person who wants to go on a vacation and you don't want to go to Ireland particularly, go to Newfoundland. You'll see Ireland there, but you'll also see a foodie scene that's unique to itself. And again, we're talking about a province of Canada, but with the nicest, as a people, the nicest human beings I've ever met. And that's why I love Newfoundland. And one last thing before we go. On December 7th, time TBD, I'm guessing around 1 p.m., you will see on CRM Players our last executive roundtable for the year, which is our annual CRM Trends in 2024. And remember what I just said about trends. So this will be a really interesting show. And we've got some heavy hitters coming onto the show. We'll announce them later. By the way, ServiceNow is one of the invitees for that. Now, so ServiceNow, I hope you were here. I know at least one of you was. Thank you for listening. I hope you take to heart what I said. You're a great company. I think there's some things to consider here. Newfoundland, go visit and stop talking to me about trends. All right. I think that will be it for today. And how'd we do? 40 minutes? Not so bad. See you later. Mashed up, and broken into two. I didn't know I was pretty till I took a look at you and I'm rolling. Yeah, I'm still rolling. Baby, there ain't nothing I can lose and I sure got the blues. Hey!
This has been a Players Productions Network digital broadcast.